Hello, and thank you for attending today's webinar, The Reinvention of Cloud Networking. Today's presenters are myself, Ashley Wiesner, a studios editor at SDxCentral, Atif Khan, co-founder and CTO of Alkira, and Dan Cruz, a senior network architect at Koch Business Solutions. Today we will look at the current cloud market landscape, downfalls of cloud networking as it currently exists, the current cloud networking approaches, and the need for new cloud network solutions. Following that, Atif and Dan will discuss a new approach to cloud networking. The cloud market continues to grow. According to a Gartner report, enterprise workload deployment in the cloud is expected to double between 2020 and 2023, from 20% to 40% of workloads. Between 2016 and 2017, the multi-cloud wasn't even considered a conversation starter over at Gartner. By 2018, the cloud entered the conversation and has ranked as the top conversation driver the past 2 years, indicating industry interest in the approach and a shift to multi-cloud deployment. Gartner expects 60% of enterprises will rely on cloud services within the next year. Alongside this increasing reliance on the cloud, an increasing number of cloud solutions are entering the market. These solutions are aimed at improving cloud performance and simplifying connections to multiple cloud workloads and applications. These new-to-market solutions indicate the adoption of multi-cloud environments will continue in a direction that better serves the needs of individual organizations. Despite the new solutions that are emerging on the market, approaches to cloud networking remains limited and behind the times. Cloud networks are essential to extending private network infrastructures to public clouds, manage network and security policies, and achieve visibility across the network. But yet, these solutions have struggled to evolve with the rest of the cloud. Currently, there are a few methods to cloud networking available. DIY cloud networks are a tempting and common approach for organizations. Some organizations leverage co-location facilities to connect on-premise locations to clouds. This can be a complex approach that can take months or up to a year to complete, as it requires finding a co-location provider, obtaining and configuring security for the facilities, extending the corporate network into the co-location, and then configuring the cloud connection. Other organizations utilize the cloud on-ramp capabilities of SD-WAN solutions. SD-WAN cloud on-ramp solutions allow organizations to extend their SD-WAN network into the cloud. However, SD-WAN solutions are limited to basic cloud connectivity, meaning organizations cannot insert network services, define or control security policies, manage throughput. Claiming to offer multi-cloud networking solutions are mid-mile network providers. Ultimately, the pieced-together offerings of these providers are comparable to SD-WAN solutions. Cloud orchestration tools are also used in cloud networking. These tools help simplify cloud orchestration and operation, but still require a deep knowledge of individual cloud capabilities, functionality, and limitations. Now, network engineers are required to be versed in each cloud, but also the orchestration tools themselves. An ideal solution? Cloud networking delivered as a service. The benefits of the cloud are well known. The cloud drives agility, delivers differentiation, accelerates time to market, and improves scalability. And this is all true, but that doesn't mean the cloud doesn't have any downfalls. Throughout the adoption of the cloud, security and computing aspects have continued to evolve, while networking solutions remain stagnant and fall short. And without adequate cloud network solutions, the cloud isn't really living up to its potential. Current cloud networking solutions are slow, difficult to maintain, and costly, with both high upfront investments and ongoing operational expenses. The monitoring and visibility capabilities of most cloud network solutions is a critical flaw in these solutions. Current solutions create operational blind spots that in turn requires organizations to obtain and operate a network management system. The pace at which cloud adoption is occurring also poses a unique challenge. Most cloud network approaches have difficulties keeping up with the rapid agility the cloud demands. And ultimately, these current methods have become increasingly complex the more public clouds and branch locations the enterprise uses. In order to best suit organizational needs and remain aligned with the constant evolution of the cloud, organizations must adopt a modern approach to cloud networking. To combat many of the downfalls of traditional cloud networking, organizations should look for a cloud networking solution with the following at its core. Easy. It requires no need for a specific cloud expertise and has point-and-click consumption. It's on demand, so it can be deployed when and where the organization needs it. It's secure, with security and network service integration. It's scalable. It has the ability to accommodate network needs in real time. Transparent, with full visibility and monitoring. And it's cost effective, requiring no upfront costs, and you only pay for what's used. In combination, these components offer a cloud network that is easy to obtain and maintain, that can ebb and flow with the specific needs of your organization. And ideally, this cloud network should be delivered as a service to provide ease and use of management, which will lead us into the next half of this webinar. But first, before we turn it over to Atif and Dan, let's discuss Alkira's revolutionary global on-demand cloud network. Let's go over a few key points so far. Cloud adoption is continuing at a rapid pace. Current cloud networking solutions fall short despite the evolution in both security and computing segments. Cloud networking methods need to evolve with the needs of organizations in mind. There are limited cloud network options currently available, and ultimately, a new solution is necessary. Which brings us to today's speaker. Atif, over to you.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm very pleased today that I'm joined by Dan Cruz. He's a senior network architect at Koch Global Services. Dan will walk us through Koch's cloud journey and how Koch Global Services is deploying Alkira's solution. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dan. Dan, take us through your presentation, please.
Thanks for the introduction, Atif. Let me start off by giving a little background on Koch Industries. So I work for Koch Global Services. We're the managed service provider for the different Koch companies. Koch is one of the largest privately held companies in America, based in Wichita, Kansas. We do a lot of different things within Koch, from packaging products, paper products, building products, chemicals, refining, fertilizers, just a whole slew of different things that we do within Koch. And KGS is responsible, or Koch Global Services is responsible for supporting all of those Koch businesses. Koch's enterprise network consists of 7 different enterprise networks globally. We have thousands of applications, tens of thousands of access points, thousands of routers, hundreds of thousands of switches and switch ports. We're in 70 different countries with 700 remote locations that we manage for Koch Industries. We started our cloud journey 4 to 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, we were like any traditional enterprise before SD-WAN. We had MPLS networks everywhere. We were anchored to our data centers, all traffic routed back to our data centers, limited bandwidth, centralized ingress and egress for internet, for SaaS services, for business-to-business communication, and all of our applications resided in the data center. About that same time, as when I met Atif and his team. At the time, they were with an SD-WAN company, and we were looking at SD-WAN pretty heavily to help transform the network environment in preparation for cloud activities and the beginning of our cloud journey. Some of the things that we thought about in the early days 5 years ago was, how did we see it progressing over the years? So we knew to get out of our data centers on-prem that it was going to take some fairly large connections to the cloud environment to do our heavy lift and shift or large data transfers out of our physical locations into the cloud environment. And so the first thing that we built in the network space, we called our transport hubs. We have 4 of these locations in the US, in which we have large direct connects to AWS that facilitated our large server migrations. As we continue to look into the future, there wasn't really anything in the market at the time that allowed us to move to as a service or really do things virtually in the network space and consume that as a service, right? So we ended up stitching together, building our own cloud on-ramps, transport hubs in the cloud, if you will, that allowed for remote site connectivity, local egress, point-to-point or business-to-business communications directly from the cloud. From there, the next step was as a service, but nothing existed in the market. So the first iteration of our transport hubs, the on-prem physical, took a lot of work, super heavy lifting, 18 months to build out these facilities with the capability needed to do our large data transfers into our cloud provider, AWS being our current preferred cloud provider. A lot of that was lead time for circuits to pull in, but there's also a lot of complexity in our environment. We talk about 7 global enterprise networks and having to connect those to the cloud from these hub locations. We spent roughly $2 million in that effort with 2,000 labor hours to do that. We looked at co-location facilities, we looked at different circuit providers, different cloud providers, circuit sizing, hardware. When it was all said and done, we ended up with 4 hub locations, 3 10 gig direct connects to AWS. We also have a 10 gig backbone that we built between these hub locations, so we could also do data transfer between them. We moved away from dual internet circuits at the hub locations and dual MPLS circuits at the hub locations and leveraged more geographic internet failover. We also reduced MPLS and internet circuits as we had an active SD-WAN production rollout going at that time. That worked well for a period of time, but as our workloads and applications became more prevalent in AWS, in the cloud, we started seeing gaps in capability that existed within the cloud provider, as well as gaps in just the service that we were delivering to our customers. So we had to think about things a little bit differently and how we were going to provide those services. Some of the problems that we were looking to solve were local egress from the cloud, ingress into the cloud, remote site connectivity to the cloud. At this point, with our transport hubs or physical locations, everything's still backhauled to the data center before writing the direct connect into the cloud. And our businesses, we're really trying to transform and do things differently. And so the performance they were getting across the direct connects and backhauling just wasn't good enough for them to transform. Additionally, on top of that, we had taken a stance that as we moved to the cloud, the private cloud or on-prem connectivity was a legacy way of connecting, that things should be cloud native, leverage modern application architecture, and shouldn't require connection back to Koch's private network. We were wrong. Turns out that refactoring the applications was a much longer path, and that we had to provide some capabilities in the meantime while applications were being refactored. So in building out our cloud on-ramp, some of the things that we had to consider were the native capabilities that existed in AWS. Do we account for load balancers, or do we deploy our own load balancers? How much complexity do we want to take on? How are we going to facilitate remote site access directly to AWS without having to backhaul? Is internet good enough, or do we need MPLS? We ended up spending 6 to 9 months to build these cloud on-ramps. And at the time, the network team, we were heavy into SD-WAN. We were in the middle of transforming ourselves. And so there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge around how to connect into the cloud, or even how to do networking in the cloud. What is a VPC? What's a VNet? These were a lot of questions and a lot of lessons learned along the way. And doing it just for one cloud provider took us 9 months, and ultimately really took somewhere between 12 and 15 months when you talk about all the logistics on the back end and approvals and things like that. It was 6 months worth of technical work to do the design, build, test, and validate for our first customer. After that, we've been able to deploy them. We've gotten that down to about a 6-week lead time to deploy into AWS. But as we look to multi-cloud and adding Azure or Google or any other cloud provider into our environment, without some sort of service that we can subscribe to, it's another 6 to 9 month build time. The cloud environments are vastly different, and what we're seeing in the market right now as far as talent is it's hard to find talent that is versed in all the different cloud connectivity capabilities from AWS or Google or Azure. At the end of the day, we have 10 cloud on-ramps deployed, or had 10 cloud on-ramps deployed across the globe, 85 VPCs roughly. We spent thousands of labor hours building that out. But we did end up accomplishing the goal of having local egress from AWS, remote site connectivity, leveraging SD-WAN, and ingress capabilities. At the time, we finished building out our virtual cloud on-ramps in AWS. I'd done some presentations, and Atif and his team had recently started Alkira, and approached me to have some conversations. And they started, I was proud of what we built. There wasn't much in the market that provided those same capabilities. And for Koch, it was a pretty amazing feat that we were able to accomplish that for the business, at least in my mind. But Atif started asking me questions about what we created and what was next for Koch Industries, what we were looking at, and how we were going to solve those challenges.
So Dan, maybe at this point, you can also tell us how difficult and what kind of challenges you saw, you had, or you ran into, when it came to day 2 operations, like running the network and troubleshooting it. Because building it is one thing, right? So you can spend time and you can build it over time, right? Yeah, it can take 9 months or 18 months, but once it's built, people think that, oh, it's built, so it's built. but maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the challenges of the day two, because that is where the life starts, right? So, and managing such a complicated environment is a monumental task.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, so our first deployment of cloud on-ramp we did for one of the Coke companies, and at the time AWS hadn't even released Transit Gateway. And so we had a transit VPC that we created with some routers, virtual routers in it that had IPsec tunnels to the VPCs we were connecting to. And in theory, we were supposed to be getting 2.5 gig of throughput. But when the businesses started leveraging it, turns out that they were only able to get about 900 meg of throughput, which wasn't enough for them at all. And so a lot of troubleshooting, working. Transit Gateway shortly after that got announced, and so we kind of ramped up our timeline to deploying Transit Gateway and transitioned over to that. Um, at the same time, the business is yelling at us on, hey, where's the throughput? Why can't we get better speeds? The operations team, I had maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 people that understood the complexity of the things that we had built uh, in AWS. We were frantically trying to put dashboards together and metrics and monitoring to see where all the pain points were and how to respond to that. We do some fairly complex routing in those cloud on-ramps with BGP peering and all the different metrics that we use. That, like, there's 3 different paths that the VPC can take to get out to the internet. And so if the route map's not right and the metrics aren't being identified correctly in the route map, then traffic's going the wrong way and performance is impacted. On top of that, there were things that we just didn't know in moving to the cloud. We're not familiar enough with all of the applications to really understand what the impacts of some of these things were going to be. And so there was a lot of conversations with the businesses about application architecture and moving from single TCP streams to multi TCP or multi UDP streams to get higher throughputs. On top of that, there was also bad application architecture that was being deployed. There were workloads moving to AWS, but the backend still being hosted on-prem. So a lot of challenges there, not nearly enough visibility into what was going on, and not being able to focus on the important things, right? So the important things being like how we deliver that service, collaborating with the application teams to make sure that their needs are being met, or we have good application architectures being deployed. I mean, the team was focused on, oh, I need to upgrade the back end here. I need to upgrade the iOS on this router because it's having problems. Those are some of the operational challenges that we were dealing with at the time. Like I said, highly complex environment. We had limited internal support capabilities, and it was designed only for AWS. Once we were able to start doing this in AWS, the questions started coming. Hey,
Right.
can we connect to Azure? Hey, can we connect to Google? What about this other region over here that we don't have anything in? And so, Atif, I think you asked me a bunch of those questions after you had found out what we built.
Yeah.
Especially what were our plans for multi-cloud? Did we think it was going to be a real thing inside of Coke? How many regions were we going to expand to, and was it sustainable? Yes, we got deployment times down to six weeks, but as we continue and as business demand starts ramping up, are we going to be able to sustain that? From there, the conversation kind of took off about Alkira, and we started testing that. it was pretty interesting watching it evolve. I mean, I think we had conversations about Alkira and what you guys were planning before you had even hired the programmers to do it, or the developers to do it. And so, very quickly you guys developed a solution that we were able to test in our environment. And not trying to max it out or anything like that, but just trying to understand, does it provide the same capabilities? What does it look like? So here's some of the results from the performance testing that we did. And when I talk about performance testing, it's purely just seeing what connection looks like, not necessarily trying to max out the system or break the system. And so in our existing cloud on-ramps, 42 milliseconds from our on-prem data center to AWS is about what we see, and that's about what we saw in the Alkira platform as well. And then throughput for a single TCP stream from our on-prem data center to AWS in our existing or traditional cloud on-ramps was 80 to 90 megs, and that's about what we see in the Alkira platform as well. So like I said, not trying to max out the system, but compare capabilities, and absolutely those things were there. One of the cool things that we were able to do in the early days with Alkira was test cloud to cloud connectivity. This is a capability we just didn't have with our traditional cloud on-ramps. Like I said earlier, those were built specifically for AWS, and I didn't have a way to connect Azure. So as we were testing the Alkira platform, we wanted to see what that looked like. And once again, not trying to max out the capability or push it to its limit, just seeing what kind of day-to-day use would look like. 6 milliseconds between cloud providers in the same region, and 190 meg throughput between cloud providers in the same region, which that to us, that was definitely worth it. It's like I said, we couldn't do it before, and we talk about data gravity, and all of our data being in AWS. If we wanted to leverage something in Azure and that had to route from US East back to our data center to then ride back up to AWS, or even if it had to ride to like an Equinix facility and cross connect there, we wouldn't see these type of speeds and latency. So that was important to us, and it's important to our application teams and business teams as well. As we look to the future and what Koch needs to be successful, and what Koch's looking at, advanced routing policies within the cloud. So I mentioned earlier, we manage 7 different enterprise networks across the globe. We only allow those businesses to cross communicate or talk between each other in 2 points globally. So being able to add that capability into the cloud environment in different regions in a simpler fashion is important to us. Historically, we've said we would never move our intercompany routing capability or cross business communication capability into the cloud because of the complexity. Alkira has definitely simplified that for us and makes it a real possibility for us to do in the future, allowing us to continue offering shared or leveraged services at scale to all of the different Koch businesses. We have various NAT scenarios and voice gateway scenarios. Over the last 5 years, Koch has had a fairly large effort to move away from traditional IP telephony and more towards cloud voice capabilities. And so having those capabilities within the cloud, or being able to connect more optimally through a cloud provider is definitely a desire for us in the future.
Yeah, so Dan, I'll just add a little bit here. So as people hearing this webinar for their um, so Coke, as you mentioned, it's such a big and complicated network. So being able to provide these services like shared services and different types of NAT scenarios, addressing them, cross-segment routing, cloud DMZ, and being able to build something which you guys can use and deploy at scale. That just gives us a lot of the deployment experience, and it just makes our solution better. So just working with somebody like you and your team, it helps us enhance our solution by a great deal.
Yeah, no, we absolutely appreciate the collaboration too with you and your team at Alkira there, Atif. I remember when we were doing the pilot with Alkira, we were primarily focused on AWS, but my endpoint team gave me a call and said, "Hey, we really need to test Windows Virtual Desktop. Can you get something spun up?" And typically the answer would have been like, "Hey, I need about 9 months to design and build something for you in Azure because we're not there yet." And since we were piloting the Alkira platform, we said, you know what, let's go ahead and try it out with Alkira. We ended up, they called me on a Friday. We got the cloud provisioned on a Monday and all the network connectivity in place on a Tuesday. And so turn that right back around to the endpoint team within just a couple days, and they were blown away at the speed at which we were able to move. So much so that like a week later they said, "Hey, can you build something for us in India?" Because we need to test out Windows Virtual Desktop there. And so ended up calling Alkira and saying, "Hey, can we get a CXP stood up in India?" Um, and that was done within less than a week. We had something built. So we had multi-region with multi-cloud built out and in the pilot in less than a week and a half, which historically that would have been an 18-month build process if we were to try and do that by ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of this type of service, right? So basically, you have the network infrastructure which you can consume as a service, and you can just go build your own network so quickly, and you can build it anywhere across the globe, and you get not just all of this functionality, but also high speed um, um, connectivity between those locations as well. So I think now it's great that you can just build your networks just like that, and don't have to spend like building these colos, putting infrastructure there, acquiring this hardware, coming up with all this configuration, managing all of that, and then on top of it, doing all of that day two operation and running it, managing it, operating it over time. So we are very excited to have been able to deliver this service, come up with this solution, and also very excited to be partnering with somebody like Koch Global Services. It just makes our solution better and better over time.
Yeah. And then, a couple of final thoughts here. At the end of the day, kind of what I'd like people to take away from this um, is really end-to-end deployments for Coke went from months down to weeks to days or hours, depending on what we were trying to do. Once the infrastructure is built out within the Alkira platform, moving a VPC on or off, or even a VNet on or off is, I mean, that's minutes worth of work on the keyboard and maybe an hour or two of planning. It's no longer weeks and days and months of planning and trying to build something out and test it. The ability to enable multi-cloud opens up a slew of opportunities for our businesses. We're in the middle of doing digital transformation, and there's a lot of activities going around with IoT and sensors, and being able to leverage the different capabilities that exist within the cloud for analytics and data storage and compute power, and really selecting the right cloud provider that has the comparative or competitive advantage for what you're looking to accomplish. Throughput and latency between clouds, definitely there, definitely high enough from what we've seen and what we've tested. Network and security services in the marketplace. I was talking with the security team the other day, and they transitioned from pay-as-you-go to bring your own license within the Alkira platform. And Chris Gregg, who's the operator in that space, he said it was the easiest thing that he's ever had to do with the firewalls. And he was extremely impressed in how easy Alkira facilitated that for us. It also allows us to continue to reduce and optimize our operation. Looking at Alkira that has the competitive and comparative advantage in this space, they have a dedicated team that is working on cloud networking and supporting the infrastructure. This frees up our resources to focus on the higher value items, the important conversations, ensuring that the way that we deliver the service, the requirements we're gathering, the outcomes we're trying to achieve are truly met.
That's awesome. So Dan, maybe I can ask you a couple of questions before we finish. So I'll start with, when we met like a few years ago, you guys presented to us your vision, like your cloud vision and the direction you guys were headed in and wanted to head in. So you guys talked about as a service as part of your vision. You wanted to get to as a service deployment model. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about why was it as a service important to you guys, and why did you choose as a service as your path forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, I love technology and I love building things and connecting networks and making things talk. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I get a thrill out of it, especially when I do something that's super complex and hard to achieve. But at the end of the day, is that the most value that I can create? Is that the most value that my team can create? And I think the answer is no. And that's why, philosophically looking at as a service or driving towards as a service, so that the mundane back end stuff we don't have to worry about, right? Like, who wants to spend, an hour talking between the teams about what IP address range to use to build a GRE tunnel and connect two VPCs together, right? Like, nobody wants to really do that type of stuff. We'd rather have conversations with the businesses about what's important to them, what outcomes they're trying to achieve, and focus on delivering that to them versus having to figure out how to make two things talk together.
Great, great. And you have when you started with Alkira, you had those transport hubs built already, and you had AWS onboarded. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the transition from your existing, let's say, deployment over to Alkira's service. Since it's a brownfield deployment, so I'm sure that's something that that's if you think it's straightforward, or if it's complicated. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So going from traditional cloud on-ramps that we built to the Alkira platform, I would say the migration strategy is key, right? So a couple of things to consider there. Do you take your existing environment and bolt it onto Alkira and slowly migrate your VPCs over? Or do you try and do, large cut and move everything over simultaneously. So definitely some complexities there, and depending on the risk and tolerance of the business, that kind of drives that strategy. Yes, bolting it on doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and can add complexity, but may give you an easier transition as far as impact goes to the business. Having having the VPC connected to the old, and then also connected to the new at the same time while you migrate things over. Automation is key if you want to do one big cut. Being able to migrate everything in a short window with Alkira's platform and the API calls you can do, and the integrations it has with AWS to be able to make those transit gateway attachments for you very easy. I would say automation is definitely a key component there if you want to do a major cutover within seconds in one night.
Great. So maybe I can ask you one more question, Dan. So since KGS, Koch Global Services, you manage and run probably 6 or 7 networks for your different Koch subsidiaries, and you provide this intercompany routing type of service to them, where one company can talk to another company. And you do all this magic at one of your data centers, and then you come across these challenges of overlapping addresses as well. And we have done some work with you to solve that or make it easy for you guys. Maybe you can spend a minute or two on that and go over that.
Yeah. So the complexities within Koch sometimes make us unique in our requirements. And so, we often look for vendors or partners that are willing to work with us and be flexible with our needs and things like that. The feedback between the collaboration between the two teams has been amazing. Just working with your development team, your engineers, them kind of digging in to really understand Koch's environment and the complexities that exist within it. I think our teams are meeting once every other week now, or at one point I know we were meeting just about every day to talk about those things and roadmap and priorities and all of that. It's been a pretty amazing engagement, and that definitely plays a role in our decision making within Koch. Looking across the market at the other vendors in the space and who has the flexibility and speed to do that and meet our requirements. Alkira definitely rises to the top in that aspect.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's been a pleasure working with you over the last many, many years, and it's a great partnership between the two companies. So I think we are almost out of time. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining us today, and a special thanks to Atif and Dan for taking the time to discuss the need for evolution in cloud networking and talk specifically about Alkira use cases. This webinar will be posted for on-demand viewing this week on SDxCentral.com. You will be notified by email when those are live on the site. Once again, thank you, and a big thank you to the audience. Have a great rest of your day.